who will get up here. Travis Tygart is the sheriff of anti-doping, he was called. So Travis, you can introduce yourself. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean. It's a privilege and an honor for me to be here. First, let me just thank FairSport, Johan, Claudia, Ed Steer, I think Jim Schwartz. Thanks for the invitation. It's truly my privilege to be here. Also, the World Forum for Business, Ethics in Business, thank you for your participation. It's wonderful to have partners like you on a conference like this. And of course, our great friends and partners at Anti-Doping Norway, Anders, Rune, the whole team there. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and to speak on what is extremely important matters as well as important time. I think, starting at the time I'm supposed to be done, and I know a break is coming soon, so I may cut some of mine in order to get us to the break and also to the discussion. I was handed, believe it or not, this topic, Fox in the Hen House. I can't understand why, Johan, I was handed this topic, but I think it was because, in part, this is a phrase, a metaphor, that we have used at USADA, both my predecessor as the CEO at USADA as well as myself, because we think it sums up the current situation and the flawed governance of certain organizations that attempt to both promote sport on the one hand. So if you're the leader of an international federation, if you're the leader of a major league sport, you're the commissioner, let's say, of Major League Baseball, your job is to make your owners wealthy. It's to grow the sport at the grassroots level. It's to get larger sponsorship contracts. It's to put more fans in the seat. It's to increase your streaming views for your over-the-top network. All of these things that go to promoting sport. And to do that, you want to put the best entertainment, so to speak, the best competition. You want to see records broken. You want to see medals going to certain countries. All of that is good for your sport, depending on the position you have within sport. Now, the flip side to that, sometimes, and not all the time, but the tension is when you have to take decisions against the very people, whether it's countries, whether it's individual athletes, who directly affect your promotion duties. So think about having to remove 7 Tours de France from a team that won 7 consecutively that's sponsored by your own country. That is not an easy thing to do. In fact, it's a really tough thing to do. Put on top of that death threats, hate mail, bad publicity, and no one in their right mind who wants to be a sport promoter would ever be able to do the right decision in that circumstance. And trust me, we have some experience on this, unfortunately. You can't promote and police. I think it's pretty simple. Is this the slide advancer? This cartoon pretty much sums it up. When you're attempting to promote and also guarding the hen house, unfortunately, you're in trouble. So I think this is something we've been talking about for 18 years since USADA was founded. We're independent. There's other organizations, you just heard from David, as a possible solution is the model that the AIU is modeled after. And absolutely, that is a solution. And they've been a wonderful welcome to the international landscape for this issue, because they're not promoters. They're there to police the sport, to give clean athletes hope that they can win the right way in a safe and healthy way. I think I was also asked to talk about this because this issue now is highlighted like never before. And it's because of the poor handling by both WADA and the IOC dealing with the Russia state-sponsored doping. And hopefully during the Q&A we'll get into some of the detail. But WADA is controlled by sport. And if you've ever experienced a WADA executive committee meeting or foundation board meeting, you know that WADA is controlled by sport. And it's fundamentally flawed. And you heard Linda earlier talk about the effort to redo the code compliance process. And that's just one example of many where sport has an interest in not exposing its partners and will even change the rules midstream in order to protect their partners. So it's fundamentally flawed, and I think unfortunately it's doomed to fail unless there is change. There is a silver lining. Obviously, Minister Helleland stepping up, Others in sport who are very good people. Max Cobb of the IBU is fighting hard within his sport, and many others who are standing up to say, you know what, we see this for what it is, and enough is enough. It's time to implement the kind of reform that we need to have to ensure that clean athletes have their rights protected. And obviously the athletes, in a huge way, are standing up and mobilizing like never before, and that's a good outcome. A couple other silver linings: the new investigative unit, hopefully, is going to be successful and truly independent, while the decisions are still made by the WADA governance structure, not independently by the investigative unit. The CRC, as you heard, they're attempting to redo that process and those rules, so we'll see ultimately if it pans out in the way that it should. And keep in mind, that wasn't there to do the right thing for the right reasons. Those are in place now as a result of the scandal. And yes, the scandal has brought a number of these issues to light, but we can't wait until another scandal happens to put in place and effectuate the type of change and reform that is truly needed. The confidence, not unlike financial market, stock market, housing market, confidence of the public in sport is crucial to its value from a market standpoint. You're going to hear from some financial fraud experts later today. But that confidence grows from the people that are subject to the regulation and that build the confidence in the market: the athletes, the coaches, those who participate in it. And their perception of it being a robust, fair system is critically important to their willingness to abide by the rules that are in place. And not unlike law enforcement. You know, think of some of the stories you've heard about inner city crime and how tough it is sometimes to prevent inner city crime, at least in the United States. And the reason is the point the police become seen as either incompetent, biased, giving favors to certain people, possibly corrupt, then those who are there willing to follow the rules and expect the rules to be enforced fairly to protect their rights suddenly lose all faith in the systems that are there to protect them. And it's at that point that athletes, under the anti-doping scenario, are forced to make a really difficult decision. Do you continue to play by the rules, or do you attempt to get away with it? And unfortunately, what has absolutely flowed from the poor handling and decision-making by WADA and the IOC on the Russia state doping system is a pretty clear message that if you cheat your way to the top, like the Russians did in Sochi, it's okay. And you'll get away with it to a large extent, as long as you're too big to fail. And that's how this situation has been handled, not a fair, even application of the rules. So on my last slide, I think some of you know my family is from Norway. And when I told my 14-year-old and my 11-year-old son I was coming here, I was told them the topic. Actually, I may have been on the phone with the organizers, and I said, "Oh, a fox in the hen house," and my kids got kind of a laugh out of that, and they said, "Oh, you're going to Norway to talk about the video that was created in Norway." And while I wasn't here to talk about that, I certainly thought that video sent a pretty interesting message. So can you guys play that from the back, or do I play that up here? Can you play it from the back?
But there's one sound that no one knows. What does the fox say? What the fox say? What the fox say?
Well, it's kind of funny, a little cheeky. Hopefully next time you see sport administrators talking about their role in anti-doping, you'll really question what is the fox saying. And I think right now, unfortunately, the fox is pretty satisfied because they believe that they've weathered the storm. If you heard the announcements at the recent WADA Athletes Forum, they in fact don't believe they're the foxes. They are now attempting to convince you that they're independent when we all know that they're not. And unfortunately, I think it has also solidified the positions that they are taking. And if reform, as we've talked about already today, and justice ultimately for clean athletes doesn't happen, I'm really worried, as are a lot of people who are now following these issues, that all the good that has happened since 2000, when WADA first, in 99, when WADA, the concept of a global watchdog first got determined, and there's been a whole host of really good efforts and programs put in place since that time, but all the good effort that came to a head when an IOC executive board member was named to be the WADA president, literally putting the fox at the top of guarding the henhouse. All of the good work that happened up until that point is going to be for naught if we don't change the structure system of the World Anti-Doping Agency. Thank you.